Antes de empezar, si quieres clases de inglés conmigo, métete a englishwithdane.com/classes y reserva tu plaza. For this course, que acaba el 22 de diciembre, hay clases en grupos reducidos de 4 personas max y para alumnos de nivel intermedio 1 e intermedio 2. So, ya sabes, métete a englishwithdane.com/classes y disfruta de clases semanales muy dinámicas, prácticas y diseñadas para que mejores de manera rápida y eficiente. Hey, what's up? What's going on? Welcome to English with Dane, a podcast designed to improve your English. As always, I'm your host, Dane, and you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at English with Dane. I recorded this episode on the 21st of September, but I didn't have a chance to release it until now, so thank you for bearing with me. This episode is a today in history moment that I read about and thought was interesting. Intense, a bit dark, but interesting nonetheless. There's a bunch of new vocabulary to pull from this story, so get ready. All right, let's get right into it. You are listening to episode 147 of English with Dane. Hit it. All right, we have officially started the show, so let's talk about this moment in history. This particular story went down, or happened, or occurred in 1983 on the 21st of September. Warning, this story has some intense details that some people might find disturbing. I've been listening to a lot of true crime podcasts recently, so I feel like I'm used to it. Don't know if that's a good thing or not. All right, here's the headline. A 13-year-old newspaper delivery boy is found dead. The mutilated body of 13-year-old paper boy Danny Joe Eberly is found in his hometown of Bellevue, Nebraska. Eberly had been stabbed multiple times, bound with rope, and tortured to death. FBI investigators called in to help catch the vicious killer found only one clue that could help them. The rope that had been used to tie up the victim was so unusual that the FBI had no records of similar ropes made by any domestic manufacturers. As they began looking into international rope manufacturers, the body of another 12-year-old boy, Christopher Walden, was found deep in the woods near Bellevue, covered with snow. With no leads as to the origin of the rope, the FBI concentrated on a witness who claimed to have seen Walden with a young man shortly before his disappearance. The witness, who agreed to be hypnotized to try to provide a description of the man, couldn't produce a vivid picture, but managed to remember a tan sedan and 7 digits in no particular order from the license plate. Unfortunately, Nebraska had over 1,000 license plates with these digits. The break in the case finally came on January 11th, 1984, when the operator of a Bellevue daycare center noticed that a suspicious man was cruising the street outside and reported the license plate number to the police. Detectives traced the car to a dealership that told them that the car was on loan to John Joubert, a 20-year-old radar technician. Joubert's car, which was being fixed, que estaba siendo arreglado, which was being fixed at the dealership, was a tan sedan that had a license plate containing 2 of the 7 digits that had been recalled by the witness earlier. When the police caught up with Joubert, he had a duffel bag with a hunting knife and a length of rope inside. The rope turned out to be identical to the one found on Danny Joe Eberly, and Joubert was charged with multiple counts of murder. Apparently, the unusual rope had been especially made for the military in the Far East and brought back to the United States by one of Joubert's friends. Delving deeper into his background, investigators found that Joubert was also responsible for an earlier murder of an 11-year-old boy in Maine. After being convicted of the 2 murders in Nebraska and sentenced to death in 1984, he was convicted of a murder in Maine as well and executed in 1996. I know, pretty dark, but I bet you were really into it. Like I mentioned in the introduction of this episode, I've been listening to a lot of true crime podcasts recently, and there's something about these type of stories that is really captivating, that really makes us listen. If you haven't heard any true crime podcasts, I highly recommend you do. If you have a long drive ahead, or if you have a long commute to the office or wherever you work, I highly recommend you give them a chance. Anyway, let's do a quick vocabulary check. There were some good words in that story. First, let's talk about bound, which is the past form of the verb bind. The phrase was bound with rope. So to bind means to tie, atar in Spanish. So bound with rope means tied with rope, atado con cuerda. This reminds me of a good expression, to be in a bind. If you are in a bind, you are in a difficult situation to get out of, or a difficult situation to navigate. To be in a bind. Next up, we have the adjective vicious. The phrase was the vicious killer. Vicious means deliberately cruel or violent. A vicious attack is a collocation we hear quite a bit. In Spanish, we would say cruel or perverso. I like perverso as a translation for it. Then we have the verb to cruise, but in continuous form. The sentence was, a suspicious man was cruising the street outside. To cruise, spelled like Tom Cruise, means to travel smoothly, de manera suave o tranquila, to travel smoothly without a precise destination, especially for pleasure.
Cruising down the street in my 6'4".
Next, let's talk about on loan. The sentence was, detectives traced the car to a dealership that told them that the car was on loan to John Joubert. To loan means to lend, right? Prestar. If something is on loan, it means that it has been lent to you, que se te ha prestado, that it has been lent to you. A loan, the noun form, es un préstamo, a bank loan, for example.
The Human Torch was denied a bank loan.
Then we have duffel bag. A duffel bag, spelled D-U-F-F-E-L, is, yes, a type of bag, one that you typically carry, not roll. It was originally used by the military, I think, but is now widespread, so it is used everywhere. It's like those bags that you carry to go to the gym or play tennis or whatever. Next, I wanted to talk about the phrasal verb to turn out. The sentence was, the rope turned out to be identical to the one found on Danny Joe Eberly. The rope turned out to be identical to the one found on Danny Joe Eberly. So basically it means resultó ser in this case. The rope turned out to be, la cuerda or soga, resultó ser. The rope turned out to be. This is a phrasal verb or expression, I guess, that we use a lot when telling people stories or gossip, actually. You can say something like, it turns out they were having an affair all along. It turns out his old boss actually knows his new boss. It turns out we had gone to school together. Here's an example from the movie Titanic from 1997.
It turns out that Mr. Dawson is quite a fine artist. He was kind enough to show me some of his work today.
I know I use Titanic a lot on this podcast, but I can't help it. Fantastic movie. And it always seems to have great examples. So yeah, go watch Titanic again. One more before we finish. To delve, spelled D-E-L-V-E. The sentence was, delving deeper into his background, investigators found that Joubert was also responsible for an earlier murder of an 11-year-old boy in Maine. To delve means to reach inside something. So to delve into means, let's say, to look deeper into something, to dig. To dive into something is also a way to say it. So in this case, investigators delved deeper into his background. They looked more closely. They researched more. They delved deeper. All right, that's it for this episode of English with Dane. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. If you made it this far, si llegaste hasta aquí, if you made it this far, give it a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. If you want transcripts for all future episodes so you don't miss a word, go to englishwithdane.com/transcripts and sign up to the listener list. You'll receive full transcripts for new episodes on the same day as they come out. If you want past episode transcripts, you can get those too. That's englishwithdane.com/transcripts. All right. Talk soon. Later.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.